Oh boy, officers, today we get a stark reminder of why your reactionary gap is so important to maintain. Hi everyone, welcome to today's badge cam lesson here at Active Self-Protection. And officers, if you don't know what your reactionary gap is, you better pay attention. I am your host, John Correa.
I'm your co-host, Mike Williver. Today's video comes to us from the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department.
Download the ASP Unlimited app for all the content you love from Active Self-Protection and more with no interference from YouTube. No ads, no age gates, exclusive videos, seminars, classes, and more on iOS, Android, Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, and Android TV. Hit the link in the description or download ASP Unlimited from your app store today.
It's the middle of the night. This is a domestic incident. The officers have called here. This woman that they're talking to has called them. Before that, a male in the household is called. I think that is her brother, their brother and sister, and he said that she has gotten aggressive and choked him. The news stories that I've linked in the description, as well as there's actually a full adjudication from the DA in the description on this one. Says that they had developed probable cause to arrest her for domestic battery. So let's listen in on how it goes down.
But can I tell my part?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask you about.
Oh, okay. So it was just really him telling the truth. Just, I'm sorry, can you just not touch your gun or something? Just keep your hands.
It's actually on his holster. It's something that we do. It's nothing. It's not like we're gonna. It's not
No,
like
I'm asking you that.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it here. I'm just resting my hand. I'm not holding my gun. It's not even on the gun. I'm just holding it.
Do me a favor. Put your hands behind your back, okay?
Bro, break TV shot fired! Hey, are you good?
Yeah.
Hey, she stabbed you?
But can I tell my part?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask you about.
Oh, okay. So it was just really him telling the truth. Just, I'm sorry, can you just not touch your gun or something? Just keep your hands.
It's actually on his holster. It's something that we do. It's nothing. It's not like we're gonna.
No, I'm asking you that.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it here. I'm just resting my hand. I'm not holding my gun. It's not even on the gun. I'm just holding it on the...
Do me a favor. Put your hands behind your back, okay?
You can see here with the upturned knife, she attacked the officer with a very significant kitchen knife. His name was released in the DA's report. He did return to duty. She hit him on top of the head, which those head wounds can really bleed, but thankfully are seldom very serious health risks. So he went to the hospital, he was treated, he was given some stitches, he was released, recovered, and returned. The gunshots did prove fatal. She did not make it through this one. We do have a picture here of the knife that she used. Looks like a big kitchen knife, like a big serrated blade of some kind. I gotta be honest with you, Mike, we haven't seen a lot from LVMPD recently, but they get down.
They do, they get down. They don't mess around. Because they got crooks coming in from everywhere, dude. All over the country, all the knuckleheads, they converge. They gotta be ready for anything.
Yeah, but they recently changed their kind of policy on how they release badge cams, and so we haven't seen as many from them. And yet again, Mike, we see another one where a domestic violence incident gets even worse and uglier when officers get there. Now this one, again, if you go read the news stories, this woman has a history of problems. She's not got any diagnosed mental illnesses, but her brother said she just wasn't right. And she had attacked him that day. And so she was already violent. We knew she was violent. And so going in there, of course, with a heart and with the capabilities and with the skills to de-escalate conflicts and try to end this without further violence is really, really admirable. But you also have to recognize, hey, this is volatile stuff and we better be better at violence than they are if it gets to that.
And also bear in mind one other thing. I don't think I've ever mentioned this on the channel before. If you're arriving at someone's residence, right, their apartment, their house, whatever, and there is a dispute between two parties who cohabitate or who are related, don't let the fact that it's brother, sister, or like parent, child, or cousin, nephew, whatever, don't let that fool you into thinking this isn't as serious as a romantic relationship domestic, if that makes any sense at all. Because look, passions can run high between any two people, regardless of their relationship. So I think some people might think, oh, brother, sister, this is not, I shouldn't worry too much. Like John likes to say, approach every call like it's a training evolution. Do everything right the same way, like you're about to do an after action and critique everything that you did and said in that interaction. With that said, when we would do a search warrant or a fourth waiver or whatever, when in someone's house, we had the luxury of searching the sofas before anybody sat on them, right? Because people hide, crooks especially will hide knives, guns, drugs, all sorts of stuff. They'll just put it right in between the cushions or under the cushion where they have easy access in case they need it later. So they didn't have that opportunity here. So John's probably going to talk now, hopefully next, about the reactionary gap and why you want to not be so close to someone who's sitting in an area that you don't know what's going on.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to the reactionary gap here in just a second because it's a very serious issue. But I do want to deal with first, Mike, as a de-escalation skill. She sees the officer standing there with his hand on his gun on his holster. Every cop I know does this very, very regularly, but she keyed in on it as, hey, I don't want this officer to be as ready for what might be coming as possible. And she did view that as overtly threatening. I really think this was an opportunity to de-escalate. Now, I think the officer was completely justified in what he did here, okay? So I think that shooting her was 100% justified. However, I think that before that, he might potentially have avoided it. And I'm not saying he could have avoided it because, she gets to decide what she's going to do. But it would have not been difficult, rather than arguing with her about, well, I'm going to keep doing that, and this is perfectly normal and fine, to just slide your hand a couple of inches forward and cross your hands, and you're less than a quarter second slower out of the holster from there, and just deal with that problem from that perspective. Sure, ma'am, no problem. I'm sorry there. Didn't mean to make you feel that way. My intent tonight is not to have any more violence, okay? And I think that would have been a better choice, Mike.
Yeah, concur. Listen, this is something you hear all the time if you're a law enforcement officer is, why is your hand on your gun? Why is your hand on your gun? It literally, unless I have a full firing grip, my hand's not really on my gun. I'm literally just resting my hands where they're comfortable. So I'm either in an FI stance with my hands in front of me, clasped, or if I'm far enough away from any danger that I feel comfortable, which he shouldn't, by the way, at this distance, my hands naturally going to rest on my belt, on my gun somewhere. I never did it to look menacing or threatening, but many people will feel threatened or menaced by that. And while this deputy, I believe, while he didn't demonstrate any contempt of cop, he was perfectly professional. But I've seen officers get in their head, the contempt of cop being, oh, you'll tell me, where to put my hands. I'm the police and you're not. He didn't do that, but I've seen it happen in the past, and it just makes everything worse. So try to avoid that if you can, and concur with the assessment. Just move your hand and, be confident in your capability to draw that gun quickly, which it turns out he could.
Yeah, he absolutely had that capability to do so very quickly. And also, well, why would his hand maybe be on his gun? Because he's seeing what we're seeing, and he's realizing that he's probably going to need it. And newsflash, he is going to need it, and need it in a hurry. So I'm not blaming him for that. I'm just giving options here. Now, she gets up, and our officer whose badge cam we're watching right now, he says, okay, put your hands behind your back. And he has her left hand, but he doesn't recognize that she turns away from him and he can't see her right hand. And so I don't want to give him too hard a time for this, Mike, but it seems to me that he did miss the cue here, that the hands are the windows to the intent. This woman has been violent, has already shown us some pre-attack indicators, and that I needed to give myself a little bit of space here so that I don't end up eating whatever it is that's coming out of her hand. He didn't recognize that until she had that knife up and buried in his head. And I think he got really lucky that she didn't murder him here.
Concur again. You've heard the old phrase, complacency kills. It does. It absolutely does kill. So this is probably the 300th one of these he's been on, and he's like, she's not, amped up. She doesn't seem to be, she's low emotion. She's not super combative or anything. I don't have anything to worry about. The idea is I want him like 5 feet away from her, right? And backing away so he can see her hands when she gets up. Had he been that far away, he could have reacted and shot if needed. The minute I'm watching this video, I try to put myself in the head of the officer whose badge cam we're watching. The minute she turned her body, literally my feet under my chair started to move. Like, I'm getting back. I don't know what she's doing right now, but it's probably not good. She could be reaching for a phone, right? So I want to create that gap. This is his last chance to create that gap. If she goes to reach for something, whatever it is, if this is you see this picture in your head, remember this, get back, move away from her. turn around and run the other way for 10 feet if you have to, because this could be nothing or it could be everything. Turns out it was everything. Turns out she was trying to murder him. And, you know, he basically got lucky that she was too dumb to know that stabbing someone on top of the head probably won't kill them.
Yeah, and it goes against everything officers are taught, right? Officers are taught to close in. He wants to take her into custody, so he has to grapple with her. He has to put his hands on her. He has to get close to her. And it kind of goes against what you've been taught in the academy and what you get taught, you know, what your kind of normal thought process is. But if you don't have control and you can't be right on top of her to control those hands and you can't see them, then that space could be life-saving, because by the time she grabs the knife here, now she's inside his reactionary gap. From the time he sees this knife to the time that it's buried in the top of his noggin is less than a quarter of a second. It's about 0.2 seconds before that knife from here has hit him. And he's just lucky that she didn't miss by a couple inches and plunge that sucker into his carotid artery or into his clavicle, which would go down into his lungs and kill him. So that reactionary gap is critically important. And it's critically important for officer safety. And I get it. You go, well, we don't want her jumping over the couch and running off. Well, again, totality of circumstances matter. And I think these officers are doing the best they can in a tough situation. But sometimes just giving yourself a little bit of breathing space as she stands up and therefore, hey, I don't want to crowd you or whatever. We are going to have to go in. So let me have you put your hands behind your back, please. And let's do this in a kind way so that we can get it taken care of, right? I don't want to fight with you tonight, those things, instead of ending where we are. And she stabs him. Now again, when we come from the other officer's perspective, we'll see that in a minute. But I also want to say here, Mike, that his partner asked him, are you okay? And he says yes, because he's conscious breathing, capable of taking care of himself, but he's bleeding really bad. So communicating a little bit better there and saying, yeah, she got me for sure, I need some help, I think would have been a helpful thing. Now from this perspective here, this is as justified a use of deadly force as I have seen. She's a suspect that they are arresting for a domestic battery. That is a serious crime. And then she pulls a knife and stabs an officer. Is this officer justified to shoot her to stop that threat? If he's not, there's literally no justified use of defensive force in the world. So do I have any problems with this? No. She put the token in the skee ball machine. She gets to play the game and spend the tokens. This is all on her. And she's had these problems repeatedly. So is this a justifiable use of deadly force? Yeah, Mike. I mean, I don't think there's any question there.
No doubt. As I said earlier, this deputy is literally alive because she was too dumb to know that she probably wouldn't penetrate his skull with an edged weapon and didn't catch him in the carotid artery. That said, one last thing I want to touch on, John, here is the reaction time of the cover officer or deputy. I'm really not sure. I think it's deputy anyway. It doesn't matter. The reaction time was stellar. This is a guy who has practiced his drawing from what is almost certainly a Safariland ALS holster. That's almost universal these days. Drawing from that can be lightning quick, but it does require practice. It requires you to practice doing it. I recommend that anyone, private citizen, law enforcement officer, anything, to get hundreds of draws out of your new holster before you hit the street with it, before you walk out the house with it, before you go on the beat with it, whatever. Hundreds of draws, maybe 1,000 draws before you feel 100% comfortable. That is an automatic reaction. And this guy clearly has practiced it. We don't know. We may never know if he moved his hand off of the gun after she made a point of it. One last thing. Let's also note that if they're concerned with where your hand is or whether or not it's on your gun, that's probably a pre-attack indicator. So take that into consideration. At the end of the day, these two officers, they survived, right? They got through it. However, I think the big lesson here, John, is reactionary gap. When you're taking someone into custody, that's when they're going to attack you to avoid going to jail. So make sure you have that distance, plenty of distance to react. Turns out at the end of the day, these guys made it, but reactionary gap, reactionary gap, reactionary gap, so you can cover your ass.